And now we're on to our oatmeal raisin cookies. One thing that I wanted to point out is a kitchen scale is not a necessity. It's kind of a luxury at times, but what I did is I quickly measured out 2 cups of flour, but as I was emptying it onto my kitchen scale, I wanted to see really and truly how much of a difference weighing versus volume measuring really does on flour. So in my bowl, I have the 240 grams of all-purpose organic azure flour that's going to be used in our oatmeal raisin cookies. In my measuring cup is how much I have left over. So let's see how much is actually in excess of what we need. I don't think it's quite a half a cup, but I do think it's more than a quarter cup. So let's see if it's a third. Oh, well, let me rethink that half a cup. We're not quite at a half a cup too much flour. So if you're having issues with your baking not quite turning out how you anticipated, it's really not your fault. What it is you probably just have either too much flour or too little flour. It's something in how your ingredients were measured. It's not your baking scale, it's nothing like that. It's probably just how your items were measured. Because I was quite careful. I fluffed my flour. I did all the normal stuff that everybody would do prior to measuring when they do the dip and scoop method. I spooned my flour, I fluffed it up in the bag, and I spooned it into my cup. And that is how much I was too much of flour. So we are probably at 3/8 of a cup too much flour that would have gone into our cookies. So, you know, if you can afford that kitchen scale, that would be a nice little birthday gift, Christmas gift, anniversary gift, whatever. But it's one of those nice little things to help us do a little bit more accurate baking. And if you're having issues with things being maybe not consistently good, maybe they're good one time that you make it, but the next time maybe not quite as good, I would imagine that it's probably just that particular little issue. So let's move on to getting our cookies made. And this is just an old-fashioned, easy-pleasy, lemon squeezy type of chewy oatmeal raisin cookie. They almost always turn out. They never give me any issues. They're easy to make. It's usually stuff you got in your pantry. So it's something you can just whip up and have a good time with. So we're going to need a couple of room temperature eggs, 8 ounces of room temperature butter, 1.5 cups of brown sugar, 2 cups of flour, which is, when we're baking, 2 cups of flour equates to 240 grams, 2 cups of oatmeal. I never weigh out my oatmeal, and I still seem to be all right on that. And a teaspoon each of both baking soda and baking powder, a teaspoon plus, whatever your taste is, of cinnamon, and approximately a half a teaspoon of grated nutmeg, or whatever your taste level is, and about 8 ounces of raisins. So let's go ahead and get the sugars in our bowl here. Let me snap my mixer on, and then I am going to adjust you so that you can see inside my bowl, and maybe I can actually get my camera that you can see both me and my bowl. I'm not going to guarantee it. This camera thing, I don't know how y'all do it on YouTube, but y'all are better than me. That's all I got to say. Okay, I've got 1 of our cups of brown sugar in our mixer already, so I'm just going to put the other in. And with brown sugar, I always do a packed brown sugar. So we've got the 2nd cup going in. So I'm going to raise that up. Turn that on and let her go. And then while that is mixing, I'm going to go ahead and start putting some of our dry ingredients together in our flour that we've got laid out. So let me just kind of slide this out of the way so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. Oh, there, we got both in, sort of. It's no big deal if you really can't see me. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the spices in. So the recipe calls for a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to go a touch heavier on that because everybody in our house really likes cinnamon, so I'm going to go a wee bit heavy. Already, and it's starting to look like it's creaming nicely, so I'm going to add the first egg. And my compost bucket is already out, so I'm going to have to find some place to stash my shells. So we got that in. So you can use ground nutmeg, you can grind your own, you can freshly grate it. I always keep my nutmegs in the actual little nut, just because they keep so much longer. So I'm just going to go ahead and probably grate up 1/2 to 3/4 of this. Because nothing says the holidays like some fresh grated nutmeg. I'm going to quick toss in that second egg. Alrighty. And this one, we're going to toss in, and I'm going to quick wash my hands. And I'm also going to pop my oven on because this is the first thing today that I have been baking. So it's going to take a little longer to warm up. So I'm going to toss this one up to 375 to warm up, but we're actually going to bake at 350. I'm going to toss a little bit more of this nutmeg in. There we go. Drop that down. And I am just going to give this a quick stir because I just want to mix that in. And this one does not have any salt in, but I always put salt in anything that I make that's sweet. I'm going to have to edit my recipe. So that was probably 1/2 teaspoon of salt, I would imagine. And then I just want to get all the spices evenly distributed in our flour. Oops. And I'm also going to do our baking sodas and our baking powders. That would have been just fabulous had I forgotten about that. Talk about a total failure. You know, sometimes I wonder about myself, I swear. And then I'm going to grab our 2 cups of oats all at the same time. And I'm going to turn my mixer just on to stir. There's the first one. And it may appear that I'm not doing a full cup, but if you look closely, you see that my measuring cups have a little line where it doesn't go all the way to the top. And that is good. And then we're going to need 8 ounces of raisins. And I usually do my raisins by hand, but I think we should be able to go ahead and just add these in. Oh, somebody went off the bag here. Does not have the little fold over, so it doesn't pull like a normal feed bag. And 8 ounces of raisins is generally a cup. And if you want your fruit to be a little bit more individualized and maybe not sink to the bottom of your dough, you can always fluff it up with a little bit of flour. That works great. It's not a necessity though. And I've broken up most of the bigger clumps. So I'm just going to set this on stir again. Oh, stir isn't going to get me much good here. The item here. So let's get a little bit started. And then I will usually just hand mix anything that looks like it needs a little more touch in. And this is a nice stiff batter. So you can either put this in the refrigerator or scoop it right away. You're going to get a little bit of a higher cookie if you put it in the refrigerator and let it chill for 15 to 20 minutes before you bake it, which is something I just might actually do on this one. So I'm going to turn my oven off. I can feel that butter is still a little bit soft, and I like these cookies a little bit fuller, and they stay chewier that way. Scoop everything off the sides and just kind of make sure that everything has some raisins in it. It looks well mixed. Now, if you want to freeze this batter for baking later, this is a perfect time to put it on some wax paper, roll it in a log, and then wrap it in saran wrap and then throw it in your freezer. And if it's going to be in your freezer for more than, say, a month or so, then I usually put some sort of foil on top as well. And since there's only 2 of us, very seldomly do I bake a ton of cookies because both of us have a horrendous sweet tooth. We will plow through a batch of cookies like they weren't even here. Alrighty, so let me get this into the refrigerator to cool, and I'm going to start scooping them out, and I'll show you what everything looks like just before I pop it in the oven. Okay, I've gotten all of the chewy oatmeal raisin cookies scooped out, and I just use a standard small size cookie scoop, and I like to roll mine into a ball. I don't spend a lot of time because otherwise you melt the butter again and they get a little bit too soft, but it gives me that second to make sure that everything kind of feels as though it weighs about the same kind of weight. So that's one of the main reasons that I will roll my oatmeal raisin cookies. And also I find that I like the texture a little bit better because it gives me a little bit of a chewier, thicker cookie. So we're going to pop these into an oven that is set at 350 degrees, and you're going to bake them for 8 to 9 minutes. And you want to bake them so that just the edges are a little bit brown and the center looks as though it's undone. As your cookies cool, they continue to cook. So if you bake your cookies until the center is done, unless you really like really crispy cookies, they're going to be overbaked. So I'm just going to pop my oven up to that 350 again and put the 3 trays in. And if you like, some people like to only put 1 tray of cookies in at a time. You're more than welcome to do that. I tend to put in anywhere from 3 to 5 trays at a time because that's what my oven will hold up to 5 cookie trays at one time. But my Aga does cook a little bit differently than maybe some of the more common brands. I always check my top rack 1 to 2 minutes before the time is done, and the bottom rack is always, you know, closer to that last bit, or sometimes I'll pop that bottom rack up on the top after I've taken my top rack of cookies off, and then sometimes I'll also rotate it, and then that way everything's kind of cooked all at the same time for me. I really don't worry about having, you know, airflow around everything. The side of the oven that I use to bake my cookies in is a convection oven. Whether or not it's different than a standard American convection oven, that I don't know because I've never had a convection oven. I've always just had a standard natural gas oven. So this is my first this home is my first home that I'm cooking on a European-made propane oven. So, you know, and propane cooks differently than natural gas does, so I had to get used to that. And then my oven is a unique little creature that I absolutely adore, but she's touchy and she's unique, but she works like no one's business. So I will take her quirks because she fits right in with everything else here, because there ain't anything that's here that's not quirky. Whether it's two-legged or four-legged, it's all quirky. And apparently so are some of my appliances. So I'm just going to pop these in. Oh, should have been a little bit more carefully how I laid some of these out. I do try to leave a rack in between my first and my middle if I can. If not, I will just slide these buggers straight on in and do 5 rows of cookies. Easy pleasy. So again, oh, let me set that timer. Otherwise I will forget. And it's normally 8 to 10 minutes, so I'm going to set mine to check that top rack at 6. Everybody knows their own oven, so, but the standard bake time is 350, 8 to 9 minutes. And I'll let those bake, and then we can pop them out of the oven and see how they look. Okay, the oatmeal raisin cookies are out of the oven, and I've already taken a few off and put them on the table to finish cooling. And as you can see, by rolling them and chilling the dough just a little bit, you get a nice, thick, chewy, traditional oatmeal raisin cookie with very little effort. So I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of these on the table to cool.